Morning, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Retirement. It is 9:00 a.m. exactly. And Bonnie, if you would read some items and take a roll call to establish a quorum, please.
Thank you, Chair Bernstein. We're conducting this meeting as a virtual meeting, so I will go ahead and do a roll call now. Mr. Pryor is not participating today. Mr. Knox.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Gray. Mr. Santos.
Buongiorno.
Good morning. Mr. Oakham.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Moore.
Good morning.
Mr. Kehoe. I see you present, Mr. Kehoe. Mr. Robbins.
Present.
Mr. Harris. Ms. Zapanta. Okay, and going back to Ms. Gray, Mr. Harris, Ms. Zapanta, and Mr. Kehoe.
Yeah, he's not up. Yeah, there he is.
And Chair Bernstein is also present. Staff participating in the meeting include CEO Santos Kryman, AEO JJ Popovich, Interim Chief Counsel Johanna Fontenot, Chief Counsel Stephen Rice, Legislative Affairs Officer Barry Liu, Principal Investment Officer Jude Perez, Interim Systems Manager Kathy Delino, CISO Bob Schlofelt, CPS HR Consultant Bob Lavina, HR Training Coordinator Roberta Van Ortrick, and Division Managers Carly Natoya, Cassandra Smith, and Ted Granger. At this time, we will go ahead and ask all meeting participants to mute their mics, and we may proceed with the agenda.
Thank you, Bonnie. And Mr. Pryor is part of a bereavement squad at the fire department. He can't be with us today. He has asked that we adjourn the meeting today in memory of firefighter specialist Tori Carlin, who was tragically killed this week. So without objection, we will do so. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 5th.
Keith, I'll move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Knox, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. Bonnie, could you take a roll call, please?
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Great. Item 3 is public comment. I'm not aware of any requests for public comment. So we are moving on to item 4, other communications. First, we start with our April 21 All-Stars. JJ, would you take it away?
Thank you very much, Chair Bernstein, and good morning, all the trustees. This is the time when we recognize those staff members who have gone above and beyond the call of duty. We are here to recognize them, as you'll see them on the screen. So they are Penelope Rodriguez, Kaylin Ung, Fabio Ramirez, Lisa Garcia, Liping Lee, and our web watcher is Michael Herrera. So thank you very much for all of the great work that you guys do. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the people being honored for your hard work. Item 2 is the CEO's report. There is a memo dated May 24th, and Mr. Kryman is here.
Thank you, Chair Bernstein, and good morning, trustees and staff. Wanted to just point out a couple things from the CEO report. In terms of planning for a return to work, I do wanted to highlight that on July 6th, we are anticipating opening up member services by appointment only, and it'll be a soft opening so that we can begin to identify any operational challenges that we may have. Okay, thank you. Any operational challenge that we may have. Again, it will be open for appointment only, and I know that we've been busy making sure that our appointment scheduling software package is working properly. So that's pretty exciting news for us, actually. So in terms of the California reopening, everyone, I think, is aware that the governor on June 15th is going to make some announcements about releasing some of the restrictions that are part of the emergency orders. One of the things that I wanted to highlight for you is that we're monitoring any Brown Act changes that may require us to return to the office. And so our intel and with our lobbyists, we do not believe that it's going to be an immediate lifting of the Brown Act requirements that we had or that we're currently under operating under. And so we're planning for the July meeting, just in case, for everyone to return back to the hearing room in the event that the governor lifts those restrictions moving forward. So you should be aware that we are planning that, but we'll keep you informed as we learn new things, and we'll make sure that after June 15th, we'll write something up for you all so that we can all understand what's going on in terms of the governor's directives moving forward. March Madness, in terms of retiree healthcare, the enrollment, we've mailed out the 56,000 pieces of mail. Actually, we started mailing them out on Friday. We anticipate that all the mailings will take place by the end of the week. So we anticipate that the call volume at our in our call center for retiree healthcare will increase significantly over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I want to make sure I highlighted that. Recruitment updates. I did want to let you all know that I will be providing you with a memo by the end of the week about the Deputy Chief Executive Officer. The individual that we selected has executed the agreement, the employment agreement. And so we anticipate that he will be arriving at LACERA sometime in mid-July. He needs to relocate from a different state. And so I will make sure that I get you his resume, as well as the details of his employment, so that you're aware of his background. And so we're excited to welcome him on board. I haven't released it yet because I believe he still is in the process of trying to notify his employer. And so I want to be respectful of that. The Assistant Executive Officer position, we've had, I believe, 15 candidates that have gone through the first phase. We've reduced it now down to 5 individuals that we will be interviewing through a panel. The panel will then make a recommendation of 1 or 2 finalists, and that individual will be interviewed by myself and by the new CEO, Deputy Chief Executive Officer, and we'll make a selection at that point in time. Carly has been very busy, as you can tell, opening up exams for positions that have been vacant for a very long time. And so she's doing very, very good work. I do also want to point out that, and JJ can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that we also have hired or made an offer to a budget officer to join the team as well. And so that is my report. Chair Bernstein, so I'm more than happy to stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kryman. I do have some questions. First, Mr. Knox, and then Mr. Santos.
Good morning, Mr. Kryman. Just curious, I got my postscript newsletter at home, and it had a screenshot of the updated LACERA website that's going to launch in July. I know I missed a meeting recently. Was there going to be a demo for the trustees as to what the website looks like?
Yes, that will happen in July.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Knox?
No, thank you.
Mr. Santos.
Good morning, Mr. Craven.
Good morning.
Thank you for your report. In anticipation of the governor lifting the Brown Act restriction, is there a plan to review the telecommuting policy for the board? I certainly will welcome that. Also, whether or not I noticed in your report that we are retaining the ability for the members to be counseled via the web or the internet or Zoom or whatever we are using. So if you can give us some update on that, I'd really appreciate it.
We will continue to offer one-on-one counseling to our members via either Zoom or GoToMeeting. We have WebEx. We have a few ways that we can counsel our members. And so we anticipate that will be an ongoing part of our operations moving forward. It's been a very, very good tool. We've been able to, our members, quite frankly, like it. But I think that it's important for us to open up as well and offer one-on-one counseling in person for those members that would like to have that. So in terms of the telecommuting policy for the trustees, in terms of attending meetings, I think Mr. Rice is on the line, I believe. Is he on the line? So I know that it's we have advocated for there to be an ability for telecommuting for trustees, but I believe that's more of a legal issue with the Brown Act at this point in time. But those changes have been requested not only by LACERA but by large numbers of public municipalities and county agencies and other retirement systems. And so, Mr. Rice, do you want to add anything?
We're in a state of some uncertainty right now because we don't know what the governor is going to do on June 15th. If he simply lifts the current executive order and the modified procedures that we've been operating under for the past year or so, we'll go back to the existing Brown Act, which has the onerous teleconference rules in it. It's possible the governor may leave things the way they are for a while in terms of the ability of public bodies like this board to have virtual meetings. There may be a transitional period, there may be a transitional phase, but we don't know right now. There are also there's legislation pending in the legislature that may modify the Brown Act. Those rules probably would not go into effect, if any of them are even passed, until January 2022. But we're monitoring all of this. Barry Liu is working with Joe Ackler to make sure we're on top of the legislation on that side of it, and we're certainly monitoring what the governor may do.
So my question is, if I may, Mr. Chair, my question is the current telecommuting policy that we have pre-COVID, that we have in place, that we have used in the past, does that need to be updated to include the ability to do Zoom meetings? Because before, the policy, I believe, just discusses the phone, the ability for us to participate by phone. If I could be mistaken on that. So that's my question is, do we need to upgrade it in anticipation of what the governor is going to do? The governor is going to lift, in my view, the limitation of Brown Act. The issue is not if, but when. And so I just suggested that we should be prepared.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Santos. We have not, to my knowledge, reviewed the existing teleconference policy that the boards have. We will do that as part of this effort that Mr. Kryman described to prepare for the changes that will be coming. So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, including the ability of the public to appear via Zoom at the board meetings like we've been doing now.
Yes, and there is some legislation that addresses that. Ultimately, we can't by policy change the Brown Act. So if we go back to the existing Brown Act, the teleconference rules are going to apply. Our policy governs internal procedures and rights of trustees in certain circumstances. So we'll just, again, very fluid situation. We'll continue to monitor it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions, Mr. Santos. Anything else? I don't see anyone else in the queue. So thank you, Mr. Kryman, and we will now move on to item 5, consent. I have 2 items on consent. I've not had a request to pull either for discussion, so I would be happy to entertain a motion for both A and B.
This is Keith, I'll move.
Yeah, I'll second it.
I heard Robbins on the second. I heard Mr. Knox making the motion. So Bonnie, would you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Kehoe, Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
and going back to Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Thank you very much. We are now moving, we have nothing on excluded consent, so we're on to item 7, non-consent items. This was a green folder item. If you're looking for it, it is a recommendation from our CEO regarding an RFP to start a strategic planning update. Mr. Kryman, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that we, during the budget discussions, the last 2 budget discussions, there was a lot of interest in making sure that LACERA moves forward with the strategic planning policy. I'm sorry, not the strategic planning process. And so this particular item provides the ability for the Board of Retirement to weigh in a little bit, talk a little bit about some of the scope, the process that we'd like to use. I know that Mr. Popowich is ready to make a really quick presentation if needed. But this is really an opportunity for the Board of Retirement since they're responsible for the contracting for consultants, and we're asking for an RFP to be issued and allow us to secure the services of a consultant to assist us with the formalized strategic planning process. I believe Mr. Popowich has provided a schedule, a timeline, and also a process that we have in place. It's a very fluid document, and so we're looking for some input from the board members so that we can put together a solid RFP proposal out on the street. So
before we go to discussion, did JJ have comments to add, or?
I believe he did.
Okay.
JJ, did you wanted to add something?
Well, I think you summarized it very well. It's been many years since we went through a strategic planning process. Over the years, when we were doing our strategic planning, we didn't really have a formal process. There were different ways that we went about it. Always bringing a proposed plan to the boards for review, usually as part of our offsite. And then, including an approval either with the budget package or right before the budget at the board meetings. And so, looking at how we've approached it in the past, it became clear to Mr. Kryman and I that we really need to have a formal strategic planning process. And we thought it would be best if we sought out a consultant that could help us design a sustainable process that will be in place for years to come, that we can go through on an annual basis to create our 3-year strategic plan. The JOGC charter does actually require that we present a vision for how the strategic planning process would work. And this is in furtherance of that obligation that we have to do. The memo outlines what a framework might look like for how that process would occur. Of course, a consultant would come in here and help us and refine that and improve it. And then also the memo does outline some of the things that we're looking for the consultant to do as far as the requirements that we have for them. That would be on page 9. This is a preliminary requirement. We have to finalize and refine an RFP. But it is an inclusive process designed to include the trustees and staff throughout the organization with a wide range of views. And it, requires us to document it. It requires us to, make sure that we're following best practices. And so, as Mr. Kryman said, we're really looking for feedback and ultimately for approval to issue the RFP so that we can go get our consultant. I will say this, it's an aggressive time frame. So the reason why we put it on the agenda today was because if we're going to be able to do this and hopefully get it done so that it could coincide with our 22-23 budget process, we have a lot of work in a short period of time. So with that, I'm here for questions.
Chair Bernstein, can I just make one final comment?
Sure, Mr. Kryman.
So I did want to mention that Trustee Kehoe had asked the question of whether or not we had ever formally approved, or LACERA had ever formally approved a strategic plan. According to the records, that strategic plan was approved back in February of 2017 by the Board of Retirement. And so it's been included in the budget documents ever since, and it's been updated to reflect any achievements or accomplishments that were done for the projects that were listed on that strategic plan.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to make sure that I raised that issue for Trustee Kehoe.
I'll start off with the first question. I don't see anyone in the queue. This document envisions the current JOGC charter and the JOGC retaining a fair amount of authority for the strategic plan, but we're under a process of considering the appropriate scope of authorities. If, and it's a huge if, but if the charter gets revised so that strategic plan returns to the BOR as a singular authority, does this plan is laid out still work? Can we adjust? In other words, the selection of a firm doesn't, to my mind, really impact who would be overseeing the process in terms of the board or boards. I just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, this is it's flexible enough, and the consultant will be able to adjust accordingly. So I don't believe it would have an impact if the strategic planning efforts were assigned to the Board of Retirement as opposed to JOGC.
Okay. I believe I have Mr. Santos with a question.
Yes, thank you very much. I welcome the suggestion or request to issue an RFP for a consultant to help us develop the plan. But if I understand this correctly, and this is kind of in response to Mr. Bernstein's point, is that I'm under the impression that the idea will be to develop a strategic plan that will cover the entire organization, including the investment side of the house. And if that is the case, I question whether or not this, whatever plan is developed, would just be, it should be more appropriate to be approved by the joint board meetings. Because I think it's a good idea that we develop a total plan for the organization. And this is how we get into trouble because, the Board of Retirement has a plan, the Board of Investment has a plan. Some of my colleagues feel uncomfortable because there's a belief that the Board of Investments is encroaching on the jurisdiction of the Board of Retirement. Nevertheless, we need to function like one organization, and we need to strive to develop plans for the entire organization rather just one side of the house. So that's my thoughts. And again, I'm in favor of the RFP.
Thank you. I have Mr. Moore in the queue.
Okay. My comment is about what I've seen with the strategic plan initiatives reporting to date there's a large emphasis on budgets and, additional resources above some baseline for what it takes to operate the organization. And strategic planning initiatives are layered on top of that. And I want to make certain that this approach that we're taking for the new strategic planning process and the ultimate outcome is not layering a bunch of initiatives on what we're already doing, but looking at how we reallocate, restructure, deploy existing resources to improve and make our organization better, more effective, meeting the needs of our constituencies and to a greater degree without layering a strategic initiative process on top of what we're already doing. It's kind of consistent with what Mr. Santos was just saying about board of investment and board of retirement, acting like two separate bodies instead of components of one large organization. So we have an interest on both boards in what goes on within the sphere of the other because it impacts the total organization. So I would like to make sure that that philosophy is ingrained in this strategic planning process as we move forward.
Mr. Moore, I've got Mr. Kehoe.
Thank you. So I just want to point out that we are two separate bodies. We are two separate bodies legislatively, and we are two separate bodies as far as role and function. Although there are some elements that do overlap, and that's where the JOG-C helps out with that, specifically about budgeting elements. Ultimately, the two boards have two different roles and responsibilities. And from what I've seen with my Board of Investments hat on, I think that the Board of Investments does a good job with strategic planning elements. The focus here, we are in the Board of Retirement meeting, and we're talking about Board of Retirement issues. And the focus of the strategic plan should be related to the Board of Retirement, and elements that are related to the Board of Investment should be delegated to them and up to the Board of Investments on determining how to proceed. So I do not think that we should be combining the two together unless the Board of Investments specifically requests that, and then that would be our CEO and CIO working together to make that happen. But I see this at the Board of Retirement level, and that's what we're talking about. As far as the consultant itself, the strategic planning process is actually a board oversight issue. So I am concerned with the way that the RFP process looks like it's going to be going down, that it's going to be a staff-driven process and not a board-driven process. I would urge this board to consider placing the RFP process as well as the vetting and selection of the consultant in the hands of the Board of Retirement. The Board of Retirement should be comfortable with who that person is and should be making the final selection. Staff should obviously be facilitating that, but not be the decision maker on that. And ultimately, as the strategic process proceeds, the chair should ultimately be responsible for making sure that this happens with board involvement. Obviously, a lot of this is going to involve staff, but staff is serving at the direction of the board. So the board's going to have to be deeply engaged in this discussion process. So I'm definitely concerned about the way that it's being pushed. I think it's a little quick, and I think it's a little staff-driven rather than board-driven. So I think we should take a step back. I think the board should focus on the Board of Retirement issues, and I think the board should urge an RFP, but that RFP should have oversight by the board. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. I don't have anyone else in the queue, and I don't have a motion.
And I'll make the motion that we direct the staff to develop an RFP process in conjunction with the chair, and we give the authority of the chair to work on that RFP, bring it back to the board for final adoption.
Second.
So I have a motion from Kehoe, seconded by Robbins. I'm happy to entertain discussion or ask if anyone has any questions for clarification.
Call the question.
Mr. Santos.
I'll call it the question.
Oh, then let's take a roll call since there seems to be no objection.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
Aye.
Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Kehoe,
Right.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Zapanta.
I'll abstain. Sorry, I've had connection issues, so, and I didn't hear the first part.
Thank you. And Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes with one abstention.
Thank you all very much. So if staff would work on bringing that forward, hopefully we can get it.
But we will, I think after the meeting, we should have a discussion.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We are on to item 8, reports. Item A does have a presentation by Bob Lavinia from CPS HR Consulting and Roberta Van Noordtreek, our training coordinator project manager, regarding the employment engagement survey results. I will turn it over to them.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Bernstein and trustees. In February 2021, LACERA staff were provided the opportunity to participate in the first ever employee engagement survey at LACERA. The goal of this survey was to make it possible for staff to give honest feedback to LACERA overall and to managers and supervisors about those areas where they feel LACERA is doing well and those areas where they feel we're not doing quite so well and could use improvement. This feedback method was executed confidentially and anonymously through the Institute for Public Sector Employment Engagement, a division of CPS HR Consulting. Today, we've invited our consultant, Mr. Bob Lavina, to present the findings of the LACERA Employee Engagement Survey. Bob is the director of the Institute for Public Sector Employee Engagement. He's the author of the first book to focus exclusively on employee engagement in the public sector, titled Engaging Government Employees. It is my pleasure to introduce to you this morning, Mr. Bob Lavina.
Thanks very much, Roberta. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you. Really appreciate the opportunity to provide you with an overview of the 2021 LACERA Employee Engagement Survey results. Before I do that, though, I want to say, as I have been saying for over a year now, that the most important thing is I hope that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. What I would like to do is go through the PowerPoint summary, which I hope you're seeing projected, and I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to answer questions during the presentation and after. And Roberta will help if you have questions during the presentation to interrupt me, and I'm happy to address them as they occur to you. And Bonnie, I think you're going to drive the presentation. If you could go to the next slide, please. So a little bit of background. As Roberta said, I'll be summarizing the overall results from the LACERA Employee Engagement Survey. My organization, the Institute for Public Sector Employee Engagement, conducted the survey. We're a division of CPS HR Consulting, which is a joint powers authority, an independent and self-supporting government agency. We work very closely with Roberta to develop the survey based on our standard survey, which was developed specifically for the public sector, but we tailored it for LACERA. We ended up with 68 questions in 10 categories, 6 questions in an engagement index, and I'll show you what those are in a moment, 6 demographic questions, 1 question asking if the employee plans to stay or leave in the next year, and 3 open-ended questions, allowing employees to respond in a narrative format to provide any additional information that they wanted to on top of the forced choice questions. We administered the survey, as Roberta said, in February, and we got a really terrific response rate. 86% of the employees who we administered the survey to responded, which is, as I said, a really great response rate. And I think goes to the fact that LACERA did an excellent job communicating to employees the importance of responding to the survey and the fact that their responses would be confidential. Next slide, please. This is our model, and I like to show this model to emphasize that while surveying employees is a very important part of the process, and what we'll be discussing with you today, it's only one part of the process. Sharing results, like we're doing with the board today, of course, taking action. The real value is taking action on their survey results, whether they're the high scoring or the low scoring, and then sustaining engagement over the long term to really create a culture of engagement. Next, please. Let's start with the response rates. I mentioned that there was an 86% response rate overall. You see that salmon covered line. And here we show the results by division, ranging from a high of 100%. So HR and legal did a terrific job, ranging down to 65%. We always see variability across the organizations that we work with. However, we typically see more variability than what you see here. Sometimes response rates by organizational unit are in the 20 to 30% range. So again, goes to the fact that you did a very good job communicating to employees about how important it was to complete the survey. Next, please. So let's talk about the overall levels of engagement. I'll describe to you how we calculated the levels of engagement and then show you the results. Next slide, please, Bonnie. So on the right side are the 6 engagement index questions. I mentioned earlier that we include these 6 questions, and we've done all the statistics to prove that these 6 questions predict the level of engagement. On the left side, you see the response scale. So for each of these questions, as well as the other ones, we asked employees to respond on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being strongly disagree, all the way up to 5 being strongly agree. And we also gave employees the option to say, I just can't answer this question. I don't know, I don't have a basis to judge. We didn't want employees to use neither agree or disagree if they really couldn't answer the question. So based on the responses to these 6 questions, we calculated an average engagement score on that 1 to 5 scale for each employee. Next, please. We then sorted every one of the employees who responded into one of these 3 categories based on that average score. So if the average score for that employee was 4 or above on those 6 engagement questions, they're in the fully engaged category. If the average score is between 3 and 4, they were in the somewhat engaged category. And if the average score was 3 or below, they were in the not engaged category. Next, please. And here are your results. On the right side, you see the percentage of LACERA employees who are in the fully engaged, somewhat engaged, and not engaged categories. And we also show you a comparison to 3 of our benchmarks: local government employees overall, that is federal, state, and local combined, and the private sector. And the way we develop our benchmarks is we do regular national surveys of around 2,000 employees, randomly selected in a variety of occupations in the private and public sectors. Basically, what we do is we administer to that random sample the same survey we use for our clients. So our benchmarks are nationally representative. For instance, comparison to local government means you're comparing your results to a nationally representative sample of local government employees. So as you can see, your fully engaged score, 35%, is above our government benchmarks, but slightly below our private sector benchmarks. On the other hand, the not engaged score is below all of our benchmarks, including the private sector, which is notable. Next slide, please. So that's the overall levels of engagement. Now we're going to drill down to identify which questions in the survey are the drivers of engagement. In other words, the most significant influences on the level of engagement. And we do that to help you set priorities, to understand which areas have the highest probability of helping you improve the level of engagement. Next, please, Bonnie. And this is our analytical model. This is how we do what we do. On the left side, you see what our goal is. We want to understand the engagement levels. Showed you how we do that. Understand what drives engagement, and then help you understand which actions to take to improve engagement. And the right vertical is how we do it. So we conduct a survey, we measure the engagement levels, showed you the results for that analysis, and then we drill down. We look at workplace factors, I'll show you what they are in a moment, and then we look at cultural factors separately. And we do that separately because culture is such an important influence on organizational performance. That leads us to help you identify priorities so that you can develop action plans around those priorities. And there really should be a line going from that bottom green bar all the way up to the top, conduct the survey, because it should be a continuous cycle over time. Next slide, please. On the left side are the workplace factors. These are actually the categories in the survey. And we found through research that these are related to employee engagement. So each one of these categories included a series of questions. We asked your employees to answer a series of questions about their work, about the mission of LACERA, about their division, about their supervisor, and so on. And then for each factor, we looked at the percent of positive responses. In other words, the percentage of employees who responded with a 4 or a 5, and then calculated an average score on a scale of 0 to 100%. So the percent positive, whether it was 0% all the way up to 100%. And we never see either 0 or 100. Next, please. Then we did statistical analysis, regression analysis, to figure out to the extent to which each factor and question influence or drives the overall engagement score, that percent of fully engaged that I showed you earlier, again, on a scale of 0 to 100%. So if a question had a score of 0%, that would mean it had no influence at all on the level of engagement. On the other hand, if a question had a score of 100%, that would mean that question and that question alone determine the level of engagement. And we never see scores that are either 0 or 100%. Next, please. So I'm going to show you some charts that combine that influence and the score to show the areas and then the questions that, if maintained or improved, because some of them are high scoring and some of them are low scoring, that are likely to have the biggest impact on the engagement score. Next, please. And this is how we sort the questions based on the level of influence and the relative score into one of these 4 quadrants. And the top 2 are the most important. The upper left-hand quadrant is high influence, low score. In other words, employees are saying through the survey, these things are really important to me, and I would like you to improve on them. The upper right-hand quadrant is maintain, high influence, high score. Employees are saying, these things are really important to me, and I feel good about it. So whatever it is you're doing to drive those high scores, figure it out and keep doing it. And then the lower 2 quadrants, low influence. We're not saying to ignore these areas, but they're much less likely to help improve engagement. Next, please. This is how the workplace factors scored out on our quadrant. Now, this is a screenshot from an online tool we've given management access to drill down on the survey results. So what you see here are the workplace factors arrayed in the 4 quadrants. And the larger the bubble, the more influence. So leadership managing change, that pinkish bubble, is in the improved category. High influence, relatively low score. Training and development is also in the improved category, purple. The light blue, resources and workload, and the red, LACERA's mission, are in the maintain category. So these are the 4 areas that are most likely, based on our statistical analysis, to move the needle of engagement. Next, please. Now we're going to drill down, show you the same quadrant chart, but at the question level. So this is really where the rubber meets the road. At the question level, the issues that your employees identified through the survey that are most important to them. Next slide, please, Bonnie. This is one of the categories in the survey that is a key driver category. And here you see the questions in that category, in the leadership managing change category. So the light blue, I feel LACERA as a whole is managed well, is in the improved category. relatively low scoring, high influence. And the vertical line in the middle, that's 65% positive. That's how we determine low scoring. To the left of that, less than 65% positive, or high scoring, greater than 65% positive. It's arbitrary, but we have to draw the line literally somewhere. So that light blue is in the improve. The red bullet, and the larger the bullet, the more influential, bubble rather. Senior leaders value ideas from staff members, also in the improve category, as is the purple one. Senior leaders care about my health and wellness. So those are three areas that employees are saying are important to me and we'd like the organization to improve on. Next
Can I
slide.
interrupt just
I'll
for a
summarize
second?
this at the end. I know this is a lot of data to absorb, but I'll summarize these. Yes, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm colorblind.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry.
I see color, but I want to make sure I got the colors right.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
the big bubble, that's the light blue bubble, and that one is, I feel that LACERA as a whole is well managed.
Yes, sir.
And then the bubble below that to the right color is, which one is that?
Senior leaders care about my health and wellness, the one that's right on the line.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And again, I'll summarize these in words at the end, because I know even if you can see the colors, it's a lot of data to absorb. I just wanted to show you how we display it. So resources and workload, again, was a key driver area. That red bubble, if you can see the color, if not, it's I have the resources I need to do my job well, is mostly in the maintain category. So we'll say that's a maintain. And I have clear work objectives. The yellow bubble is clearly in the maintain category. High influence, relatively high score. Next, please, Bonnie. Training and development, another key driver area. We have a purple bubble. I believe there are good career opportunities for me at LACERA in the improve category. I get the information I need to do my job well, also in the improve category. And I am given a real opportunity to improve my skills at LACERA, also in the improve category, the yellow bubble. And next, please. LACERA's mission, very influential, very high up on the influence scale. LACERA's values and mission inspire me. So a strong connection to mission. It's right on the line between improve and maintain. So clearly there's a strong connection to mission that needs to be nurtured. And then there's, I know how my work supports LACERA's mission, also in the maintain category. And finally, I think the next one is culture. I said we do this separately because it's such an important influence on performance. In the improve category, we have, I feel valued for the work that I do, which is often one of the key drivers in a low scoring question. I am treated fairly at work, which is the light blue one, also in the improve category. And red, I feel encouraged to come up with new and better ways of doing things in the improve category. And purple, encouraged to learn from my mistakes in the maintain category. So again, a lot of bubbles, a lot of data. Let's summarize the results. Next slide, please. These are simply the questions that fell into that upper left-hand category. Improve, high influence, low score. Feel LACERA as a whole is managed well. We often see that as an improve question. Senior leaders care about health and wellness. I get the information I need, opportunity to improve my skills, good career opportunities, feel valued, treated fairly, and encouraged to come up with new and better ways of doing things. All areas that, if you can improve the scores, have a high probability of improving the overall level of engagement. And next one, please. And these are the areas to maintain, the 4 questions that were in that upper right-hand category. High influence, high score, clear work objectives, learn from my mistakes, values and mission inspire me, and resources I need to do my job well. So high influence, high score, clearly something positive is going on to result in these high scores. We encourage organizations to figure out what you're doing and keep doing it. So those are the key driver questions. Also want to drill down a little bit more on the question level. Next slide, please, Bonnie. These are simply the highest scoring questions. based on percent positive. Again, percent positive means employees responded with either a 4 or a 5, agree or strongly agree. Clear understanding of LACERA's mission. 92% agreed with this. LACERA's mission is important to me, also 90% positive. And very low negatives. Negative is a 1 or 2 on our scale. I see how my work supports the mission, 92%. I like what I do, 88%. I can make a difference in the lives of our members, 87%, and so on. Very high scoring positives, relatively low scoring negatives. On the other hand, next please. Least positive, again, simply based on percent positive. Safe to challenge the way things are done at LACERA, 40%. These are not necessarily key drivers, simply the lowest scoring questions, although that was a key driver. Resources available to me, openly discuss my personal feelings, 42%. Wellness benefits of improved health, 45% positive. Good career opportunities, that was a key driver, 47. And genuine interest in my career aspirations, 49. So while these were the lowest scoring questions, there were only a handful that were below 50% positive. Next slide, please, Bonnie. We also summarize here comparison between your employees' responses and our local government benchmarks. That's the gap column at the very right on the screen. So LACERA's mission is important to me. Your 92% positive was 21 percentage points higher than our national sample of local government employees. I can make a difference in the lives of our members, 17 percentage points more positive, higher than our local government sample. I'm proud to work for LACERA, 78%, 16 percentage points higher than our national sample, and so on. Next slide shows the largest negative gaps, negative differences where your scores are lower. People in my division share information with each other. You're 63% positive, almost 2 out of 3, still 18 percentage points lower than our national sample of local government employees. People in my division are held accountable for results, 15 percentage points lower. I feel comfortable being myself at work, 12 percentage points, and so on. So while you had quite a few questions that were significantly higher than our local government benchmarks, there are also some that are lower. And again, we always see that with the organizations we work with. Also mentioned in the introduction, one of our questions was, are you considering leaving your current position in the next year? And if so, why? Not necessarily leaving LACERA, but simply doing something else. 51% of your employees said, no, I'm not thinking about leaving my current position. 27% said, yeah, I am, I'm thinking about it. And 22% did not answer this question. We almost always see a relatively high percentage of employees who choose not to answer this question because they're a little concerned about the confidentiality. Your 27%, I don't have any real data on this, but I can tell you we often see percentages in the 30s on this question. We also broke it down by level of engagement. Next slide, please, Bonnie. So employees who said, I'm not thinking about leaving, no surprise here, high level of engagement, 46% fully engaged, only 7% not engaged. On the other hand, employees who are thinking about leaving at least their current position, much lower level of fully engaged and a much higher level of not engaged. And those folks who prefer not to say, we almost always see a high level of not engaged. Further breakdown, next slide, thanks Bonnie. We break it down by intent to leave. So again, the folks who say, I'm not thinking about leaving, high level of engagement. People who are saying, I want to stay in my current division, but I want to do something different. Even higher level of engagement than those folks who are saying they don't want to leave their position. And only, again, only 7% not engaged. People are saying, I don't want to leave LACERA. I just want to work in another division, lower level of engagement, as you might imagine. And then people who are saying, I want to leave LACERA, high level of not engaged. Again, we always see that with organizations we work with. And the next slide, please, Bonnie, a couple more categories. People want to retire, almost equal, actually identically, 27% not engaged, and 27% fully engaged. Only 15 employees self-identified. And people are saying, yeah, I want to leave, but for other reasons. I'm not sure what they are, but 62% not engaged. So very typical of what we see with other organizations. Next, please. Now we'll drill down by demographic segment. A couple of caveats here. First of all, these were self-identification. So we see typically, and you see it here, pretty sizable number of employees who did not respond to this question, again, because probably a little nervous about confidentiality. And we only report results by demographic group if we have at least 10 responses. And that's to preserve confidentiality. So you're going to see some gaps here. So here we break it down by the gender categories. Not too much difference between male and female. Female, 1 percentage point higher in the not engaged category and 3 percentage points lower in the fully engaged category. And again, people who choose not to answer these questions almost always have a lower level of engagement. Next one, please. Also asked, consider yourself to be a member of the LGBTQ+ community. We didn't have enough people who said yes. And here you see the results for the people who said no to this question. Next, please. Age. We have age categories. We didn't have enough respondents in that 19 or under or the 20 to 24. But you see here, and this is over 2 slides, as we move up in these age categories, the levels of fully engaged increases and the level of not engaged decreases. Next slide, please. That continues in the 55 to 64, very low level of not engaged. And the 65 or over, we only have 11 employees who self-identified in this category. So I don't want to make too much of this, but a higher level of not engaged. And then we have our folks in the prefer not to say category. Race and ethnicity. Again, we had 1 category. We didn't have any respondents. But here we show you the results for those who did respond. So number 3, Black or African American, lowest level of fully engaged. Number 5, that category, we only had 18, but a high level of fully engaged, as we did for category 4, Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish. Next slide. White employees, the 55 who self-identified, 42% fully engaged, high. And then we only had 21, 2 or more race or ethnicity, a lot of folks in that middle, somewhat engaged category. Next, please. Tenure, which roughly correlates with age, not perfectly, but roughly. Again, we didn't have enough employees in the 2 categories less than 1 year. 1 to 3 year, somewhat less engaged in the 3 to 5 year category. 3 to 5 year, 47% fully engaged, only 14% not engaged. Next, please. Then, there's some variability here. 10 to 20 years, 27% not engaged, 115 in that category. So that's the plurality of employees in terms of tenure. Then that 20 years or more, baby boomers, typically we see a high level of engagement, and we see that here, 41% fully engaged. And then by role, this is the last demographic category. This is pretty interesting. The 4 categories were staff member, supervisor, assistant manager, section head, senior leader, and then I prefer not to say, we didn't have enough senior leaders responding to show you the results. But what's interesting here is supervisors are less engaged than the people who report to them. 28% fully engaged among supervisors compared to 36% fully engaged. And the supervisors they have a lower percentage of not engaged, but that fully engaged category is very interesting. The research and most of our experience shows that as you move up in the organization, you have a higher level of engagement, more discretion, more authority, more flexibility, so on. That is not the case here. So taking a look at the supervisor group, having some conversations with them, we think would be fruitful. Also, interesting, the assistant manager or section head, high level of fully engaged, 57%, but also a high level of not engaged, 29%. So I think that comes out to 3 of the 14, and we don't know who they are, of the assistant managers or section heads are in the non-engaged category. We rarely see that high a percentage. Again, there are only 14 in that, that manager category. And I think that's it. Yeah. So anyway, a quick trip through high level response rates, levels of engagement, key drivers, question level responses, and then by demographic group. So clearly there's good news in the survey results. The percentage of not engaged is better than any of our benchmarks. A lot of high scoring questions, particularly around mission, but also some areas employees are asking you to focus on to improve. So I'm going to take a breath and see if anyone else has any other questions. I'm happy to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Lavinia. Are there any questions or comments?
I have one.
Go for it. Mr. Moore.
Okay, yes. Bob, did you control or was there any control in the survey for comparing our agency, which is a single purpose agency, with other single purpose agencies versus cities and towns or whatever that provide multiple services?
No, Mr. Moore, we did not control. Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you
Or
off.
is it just public employees in general?
We did not control for type of organizations. What we did do, however, is give you the comparison with a representative random sample of local government employees without regard to whether or not they work in a city or a county or a township or a special district. So that's really the only, you might call it a control, but to give you the ability to compare your employees with other employees, a representative sample of local government employees, also compared to our other benchmarks, including the private sector.
Mr. Kehoe.
Thank you. So I just ask that Mr. Kreiman takes this information and applies it to a future conversation with the board. I don't know if this is best to handle as a separate strategic planning process on how we improve the areas where we need to improve on and how we build upon the areas that are successful. But I do think that we don't just take this information and then file it away. I think we apply it. So there's a lot of good data here, a lot of good information. There's some areas that if I were sitting in Santos's seat that I would have concerns over and I'd want to turn around. Those type of things I'd like to see staff apply and bring it back to the board for any support that they need from the board in order to get the job done and work on improving morale in areas that we need to improve morale.
Bernstein, can I make a comment?
Mr. Kreiman, please, yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kehoe, Trustee Kehoe. I appreciate your support. We are looking at the information and trying to apply it to make sure that we address those areas of concern. One of the things that you should know is that in order for us to better understand the data, Mr. Lavinia and Roberta are going to start putting together focus groups so that we can dive a little bit deeper into these areas that are of concern, and of course, recognize the areas that we're doing better and how we can continue that. And so once we've received that information, I think we'll be able to be more strategic and surgical in terms of how we address these particular issues. There are a couple of areas that I looked at that I was concerned about. One of them is the slide that showed the supervisors not being as engaged as our employees, at least the mid-level supervisors. And so that was a red flag went up when I seen that. So I'm not sure if that's a training issue. I'm not sure what the concern is. It could be COVID related, how we're managing people remotely. And so those are the things that Mr. Lavinia and Roberta are going to come back to us with after these focus groups have been completed. So thank you for your comments and I appreciate your support. We'll definitely get back to you if we need anything from the trustees. And we'll report back on our progress as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for that excellent report. We will
Thank you.
move
Thank
on.
you for having me. I appreciate it. I also
Absolutely.
want to say that it's been a pleasure working with Roberta, and I don't always say that, so thank you for that.
Roberta, thank you also for your contributions. They are noted and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And we are now on to the remaining reports under section 7, all of which are designated for information only, and I've not had any requests to pull any of them for discussion. So seeing none, we'll move on to item 9, items for staff review.
Yes, the board requested that staff revisit the BOR teleconference meeting policy in light of any changes in the governor's executive order and pending legislation. And the last comment by Mr. Kehoe that staff bring back the feedback of the internal focus groups related to the employee engagement survey results.
Thank you. We will now have good of the order, and Bonnie, I'll ask that you call roll for that, please.
Mr. Knox?
Good morning. Just certainly thoughts are with the family of the firefighter. Other than that, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. It was a good meeting. My thoughts too are with the family of the firefighters. It hurt when I saw what I saw because it really was in our house. And you never think of situations like that coming home to roost. And here we have it. So my thoughts and prayers are with the family and with all of our firefighters who are grieving this moment. Thank you.
Mr. Santos?
Yes, thank you. Also, my sympathies to the family of the firefighter. It's just horrible. You read about the cities, and this time it's LA County. That is, as Vivian said, is way too close, and it's in a backyard, and it's just horrible. Also, I will respect a request that we also adjourn the memory of Linda Dent. She was the president of SEIU 721. She passed away from pancreatic cancer. I have known Linda for over 30 years. She was a tremendous leader. A lot of the benefits that county employees enjoy today, that was because that was Linda's vision. She was one of the great African-American leaders in SEIU in LA County. And with unfortunate departures so soon, it makes our colleague David Green the president of the largest public sector union in LA County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santos, for raising that. And without objection, we will adjourn in memory of Ms. Dent.
Mr. Chair, I would also just add, thank you, Mr. Santos. She was also a 40-year plus employee of the Treasurer and Tax Collector, so certainly appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Oakham.
Yes, I concur with all the comments about what happened up north yesterday. It's a sad situation. Also, I don't know if you saw, it was an interesting in Bradbury. You had a mama bear with a couple of cubs going after some dogs, and a 17-year-old pushed the mama bear back to save the dogs. And I don't know if you saw that, but that was a very interesting, she said afterwards, I'm not sure I do it. He was just reacting. I thought that was very interesting in Bradbury.
And Mr. Moore?
I just want to acknowledge Mrs. Dent's contribution to the county and to the workers and her role in SEIU 721. I want to express sympathy, heartfelt sympathy for the families who are suffering because of the injury and death in the firefighters this past week. And I also wanted to make certain that no one forgot about the massacre in 1821 that we're still addressing today, and recognize that these things happened all over the country, including right here in California, in Allensworth. So that's it.
Mr. Kehoe?
Thank you. Sympathy also goes out to 721 as well as the LA County Fire Department and the members there. And this also, we just went through our mental health awareness month, and I think it highlights the need for ongoing focus on employee wellness and mental health related issues for our employees. And I hope that LACERA also embraces that and looks at opportunities to ensure that our staff internally have that ability as well.
Mr. Robbins?
I have nothing, thank you.
Ms. Zapanta?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Johanna Fontenot?
Good morning. I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. JJ Popovich?
I just want to echo all of the sentiments that have been expressed. My heart goes out to firefighters and the families that were impacted by that tragedy. It's a shock to see that yesterday unfold, and also to Ms. Dent's family. Tremendous accomplishments, and I'm sure that we will all miss her. So thank you very much.
Santos Kramen?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Chair Bernstein?
I want to thank all of my colleagues and staff for the excellent comments and just add my support to them. We will take a break until 10:20. We will be going into executive session. And since we will be adjourning out of executive session, for the sake of anyone who's in the public and watching this, I want to say that we will be adjourning this meeting in memory of both firefighter specialist Tori Carlin and Linda Dent, who served as president of SEIU 721. Before we adjourn also, or not adjourn, before we go into the break, before executive session, there was a request from staff that we flip items A and B. So without objection, we will do so, and staff can plan accordingly for when we return. And we are in break until 10:20.